hold on one sec.
And Rabbi, you want to remind them about the cell presentation? Or did you already do that? He's muted, I can't hear him.
I have not done that, but let me do it as a part of the closing announcements.
Okay.
Because I think everyone wants to get right to
Okay.
hear from DeAngelo and Dawn and Sam.
Absolutely.
We'll save the commercials until the end.
Okay, absolutely. Jan, thank you, by the way. And now I will mute myself.
Great, we're good, Jan.
Welcome, everyone. We really appreciate you joining us tonight. My name's Jan Fisher, and on behalf of the Lifelong Learning Committee, we welcome you to our program about being a Jew of color. Our program features 3 of our Temple family members, Dawn Kessler, Sam Howard, and DeAngelo Smith. Each of them is going to share with us how they came to Judaism, what it is like for them to be Black and Jewish, and what Black Lives Matter means to them. Each panelist is going to speak for 10 to 12 minutes, and then we're going to have a question and answer period. If you think of a question while the panelists are speaking, please type it into the chat section. And then when we get to that section of the program, Lisa will be calling on people. If you have a question and you haven't put it in chat, you can use the raise your hand function on Zoom. So since I believe in ladies first, I'd like to ask Dawn to begin. And on behalf of the committee, Dawn, I'd like to apologize for transposing your 2 last names. This is Dawn Kessler. Go ahead, my dear.
All right, that's okay, Jan. I first of all want to thank you for inviting me to be here tonight. How I came to Judaism, it's love. I met a gentleman, my late husband, and I fell in love with him, and I really saw myself spending the rest of my life with him, but I also felt that his Judaism was important to him. And I needed to embrace what was such a big part of his life and who he was. He never asked me to convert. I chose it on my own. How the story began is I actually went to go visit a rabbi in Albuquerque. And almost from the moment I walked into the temple, I felt like I was at home. I can't even, I don't know, some people would call it a religious experience. I'm not really sure how to define it, but I sat down and started speaking with the rabbi. I told him a little bit about my background. I told him that my mom was from the Virgin Islands, and he laughingly said, well, I bet there's some Jewish in you, because he talked about the Spanish Inquisition and about how Denmark was one of the few countries that allowed Jews in at that time. About 10 years after I converted, I actually found out that I was Jewish. So I'm kind of I guess you'd call me a double Jew. But during the time that I was at Temple in Albuquerque, I belonged to the sisterhood. I'd help out with the brotherhood. It's where I took my introduction to Judaism classes and my conversion. And I was married in a Jewish wedding in 1990 and then converted, or actually had the ceremony and the conversion probably about 3 weeks afterward, after my wedding. And when I found my Judaism in that time in my life, I can honestly say that I'd found love, I had my family, I had my child, and my commitment to God had never been any stronger than at that time, or that was the start of my strong faith in God, and feeling like had really found myself in my place. We ended up moving to to Denver in 1995. And that's actually where I really felt like my faith was tested, or could have been tested, because when we moved here, the most important thing to me, besides getting my son enrolled in some kind of preschool, was to find a temple, because that really was the center and the core of who I was my Judaism. And unfortunately, it didn't go as well as we expected. My late husband was, or I guess he still is, conservative, and I am reformed. So we went to conformed and conservative temples. And sadly, one of the temples kept on referring to us as an interfaith marriage, even though by that time I had converted, I guess, about 5 years, and I considered myself a Jewish woman. Another one of the temples didn't feel like I was Jewish enough and wanted me to go through another conversion ceremony. And I said, absolutely not. And I chose not to. And after going back and forth for literally, I will tell you, it was 8 or 9 years. We went to the 4 or 5 different temples back and forth. And I strongly felt like we should join the reform movement, or he join it with me, because I would really be having I would be keeping the house and raising the child, and I needed to be a place where I was comfortable. And during that time, thank God, I don't know if many of you remember Roz from Boutique Judaica. She was kind of my Jewish godmother, and really helped during that time, kind of guide me and kind of help me find my place, as well as my sister and brother-in-law. And shortly before our son needed to start, or it was really important for us to have him in religious school, Rabbi Rines showed up. And so it would have been about 2005, I believe. And after sitting down with Rabbi Rines, I have to honestly say that I felt like I was home again. And I will always be grateful to Rabbi Rines for that. So one of my really low moments, I'll be really honest, is shortly before our son David's bar mitzvah. And I remember being in the parking lot, and Rabbi walked out to his car. And I remember I was really tearful, because I was really struggling, because I'm trying to plan bar mitzvah, which I've never done before. And I remember saying, this is so hard for me. I didn't grow up with the bat mitzvah. It's just really, really hard for me. And I remember Rabbi looking at me and saying, it's really hard for all of you Jewish parents. Instead of saying, it might be hard for you because you're a convert, whatever. And it's things like that that really made me, just secured my place in my heart, that, I don't know, it was just one of those important moments that you always remember in your life. And I look at Temple Sinai really very much as my home temple. It's where the greatest moments of my life occurred. It's where our son has bar mitzvah, and it's also where my husband's memorial service was. So to me, it's not just a building, it's a place, and it's a place in my heart. And so I will forever be grateful to everybody at Temple Sinai. Not once have I ever been there where I didn't feel like a Jewish person, because I am a Jewish woman of color. And being a Jewish woman of color, I wouldn't say it has been easy, but it has been more than worth it, because it's the core of who I am. You can imagine on more than one occasion, I get comments like, you don't look Jewish, which my response is always, well, what does a Jew look like? And I usually get people who are just like, well, And I'm like, no, I really don't know. And I, more than one occasion, I've said, I take really great offense to that comment. And maybe you need to rethink it before you make a comment like that to another person, because I don't think you'd say you don't look Christian, or you don't look Chinese, or you don't look Black, or whatever, or Japanese. It doesn't matter. I just take really great offense to that comment. But I think my upbringing kind of prepared me for that kind of stupidity and that kind of ignorance, because I have a Japanese maiden name. My father was Japanese and Danish, and my mom's Spanish, Black, and East Indian. So I was always the one that kind of stood out. I remember from the years of 5 to 11, I lived in an all-white neighborhood. So nigger and yellow nigger, I was called constantly, and I remember one time in particular when I had just said because I was always the child that defended myself. And I remember one time telling this boy, I said, I figured out, am I nigger or am I yellow nigger? Do you not like me because I'm Japanese or Black, or what's your story? You see how stupid you sound? And I really went off on him. And I'll never forget, it was the gym teacher, 3rd grade, telling me that I was being too aggressive and I needed to back off. And I'm thinking, wait a second, he was the one that called me the name, but because I stood up for myself and questioned stupidity, I'm being called aggressive. So I felt like that was almost like a second form of racism, not only being called a nigger by this boy, but also having the teacher basically say that, you can't defend yourself, So that was kind of my, how I grew up. And then I met my husband, and before I married or met Randy, I basically dated the United Nations, and I didn't really feel like it was, I didn't feel like color or race was really, or ethnicity was really important. And I remember Randy telling me that growing up in Vancouver, Washington, how his father was discriminated against, and how he was, and they were the only Jews, and how he went across the street to Portland for his religious school. And I thought, well, how bad could it really be, Randy? You're this white dude. And I remember going back to his 30th high school reunion and standing and talking to this gal, and she said that Randy was that something like it made sense that Randy married a minority because he was our only minority in school. And I thought, wow. And I must have had that look on my face, like, you better come over here, Randy, before it gets ugly, because he like walked straight over to me. But before that, the woman says to me, and because I started laughing, and I said, you called the white, blonde-haired, blue-eyed guy a minority? And she said, well, he was Jewish. And I'm thinking, oh my God, these people are like even crazier than what I grew up with. But it also made me realize that there's an empathy that he had, that he grew up with so much of what I grew up. We might not have the same color skin, but we both know how it is to be discriminated because of who we are and what we are. And it was just a really interesting interaction. And color has defined me so much in my life, not because of what I think, I shouldn't say what defines me, as what other people have defined me with so many times in my life. I've gotten pulled over from a police officer, and because I didn't have a front license plate in my car. We had just moved from New Mexico, and I had to get the front of my car drilled. And he ended up giving me a ticket for that, a ticket for my insurance being expired by like 2 days, and not having had a Colorado license yet. And when I went to court for it, they just kind of rolled their eyes and they apologized. And I found out about 3 weeks later, in that particular area where I was, is when they were pulling over all the Broncos who were in nice vehicles. And, because they assumed that they had, maybe the vehicles didn't belong to them. So it was one of those things where, I had to question whether I would have been pulled over if I'd been in not a very nice vehicle. And in 2000 and I believe it's 8, we moved from Cherry Hills to another neighborhood in Littleton. And the realtor told us that he was asked not to sell a house to me. And at that point, I said to my husband, we're not moving into that neighborhood. And he's like, no, yes, we are, because it's close to where our son's going to be going to school. We're not going to let, this person, stop us from living where we want to live. So we ended up living there, and it was a good experience. And let's see, color-wise too, as far as how I raised my son, I remember when we taught him how to drive, we were teaching him how to drive, I told him, you always keep your hands on the dashboard. And my husband found that to be really weird. And then I explained to him about being stopped and about how you have to tell about how you're reaching over. And then I realized that people don't identify our son as being a boy of color because he takes after his father. And he can tell you about, if you were here, he could tell you about times when he's faced reverse discrimination because he's not, quote, quote, black enough, or, because of his Judaism. So he's felt it on his end as well. And I feel like I could go somewhere, and the second I walk in, I'll be judged by the color of my skin. And that has happened more often because in some ways it's been acceptable in certain places. But I can honestly say I've never felt that at Temple Sinai. And
Dawn,
yes,
let me butt in right now.
all right,
Have you hold on to the rest for when we get to questions.
all right.
And let me bring in DeAngelo Smith, please, to tell us his story. Thank you, Dawn.
All right.
DeAngelo, can you unmute yourself? Great. Great.
Yes. Can you hear me? All right. So I want to start this off with a little story. You guys okay with a little story? And thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it. Dawn, thank you for the lead into this. I appreciate it. So I'll break it up with a little story here. So I'm from the South, originally from Tennessee. I was born and raised there till I was 19. And then I got on the plane for the first time in my life and headed to military training in San Antonio. Now, the story I'm going to tell you is going to lead you into kind of my journey a little bit. So it goes like this, and it's a Southern story, so there's pigs involved. All right, so there's this big farmer, and he comes home, and he's got his overalls on, and he's got this big pig in his arm. He goes, "Honey, look at here. I won the pig down at the pig farm." And he's got slop all over him, mud and stuff like that. And she goes, "Oh, bring it over here. Let me cook it up for you really quick." He goes, "Okay, I'm going to go get changed. You cook that pig up." All right. So obviously this isn't a kosher story. But anyways. So then the wife starts cooking the pig. And the first thing she does is she washes it up. And then she cuts a quarter off of it. Okay. And then she discards the quarter of the pig. And then she just throws the rest in the frying pan. And she starts cooking it. So the husband comes out and he goes, "Why is there a quarter of the pig discarded in the trash? What are you doing?" She goes, "I'm cooking the pig." He goes, "Who taught you how to cook a pig?" And she goes, my mama taught me how to cook a pig. He goes, let's call your mama. So they call the mom. Next, the mom. Why are we cutting off a quarter of the pig before we cook it, mama? And she goes, well, I don't know. That's what my grandmama did. So they call the grandma. Yeah. Grandma, why we cut off a quarter of the pig before we cook it? And she goes, well, I don't know why you guys are doing it, but my skillet was too small back in the day. So it just goes to show you the point of the story is that we do things based off what our parents did and our grandparents did, and that's this thing called tradition, right? So going back to my story, the first time I got on that plane and I was in San Antonio, Texas, I left my little bubble, my little world back in Tennessee. And I saw all these different types of people, very interesting, different religions, you know, saw different races that I only seen on TV before, because again, I was in my little bubble. A little background, I was raised in a predominantly white neighborhood, upper middle class. So I think there was about 3 Black families on my block. So I had, you know, a nice diverse growing up as far as Black and white is concerned. And then when I got to the military, I had this guy, he was over in his barracks and he just kept looking at me. It was me and a couple other people. The other guy was from Mississippi. And he's looking at us and he goes, you know, we start to get uncomfortable. It's like, what are they looking at? You know, something wrong? So we go over there and we ask him, hey man, why do you keep looking at us? And he goes, well, I'm sorry. I just never seen a Black person before. And we're like, what? You know? And it took us by surprise. So, you know, we kind of talked to him and stuff like that. I think he was from a rural town in Iowa. So that was his little bubble, right? That's all he knew. And to bring this into perspective, fast forward a little bit, I had my first son and I noticed I started doing what my grandparents did. I just, come on, son, let's go to church on Sunday, right? And that's what we did. And we sat there and we listened and then we left. And in the back of my mind, I had this feeling like, gosh, I'm missing something here. Like something's off. I just don't feel right doing what they did. And I couldn't explain it. It was just this internal feeling. So I think about Enron, even though they did some horrible things as a company, they had a great slogan. So I started asking myself, why? Why am I taking him to church? And why did my grandparents take me to church? And why did they go to church? Kind of like the story. And when I started researching, I figured out, hey, back in the day, my great-granddad, was on a slave plantation in Mississippi. And guess what religion they raised the slaves? Christians. So I was like, I thought about that. I was like, do I want to continue that tradition? Or do I want to make a change here? For not only for my son, but for me. So then I took a pause, stopped going to church, taking them to church, following that same path. And then I started researching different types of religions. And long story short, came across Judaism. And I was like, well, hold on. Jesus was Jewish. And they're always preaching this Jesus stuff. Why don't we just go to the source and be Jewish? You know? So I had these questions. I had all these questions in my mind. And I started studying, took the Intro to Judaism class, great class, and started reading a book by Rabbi Hyman Dain, which is To Be a Jew. And it's a more orthodox approach to Judaism. Then when I took my Intro to Judaism class, it was more Reformed. I said, hold on. You guys mean to tell me you got different sects within your religion? You know? And then they're like, yeah. And I was like, well, that makes sense. There's Protestant Catholics, there's Christians, there's, yeah, just all these different sects. So I figured it all out. Long story short, at the end of the day, I decided that I felt after meeting with my rabbi and taking the classes and being involved in the community and studying, I felt that was the right path for me. Now, again, I had my son before I converted, so I wasn't going to try to make him do anything that I did. However, for me, that's kind of how I came about to Judaism. You know, it was the path for me. And one thing my rabbi told me that amongst many of our meetings was that, you know, your relationship between God is between you and God. And it was like an epiphany for me. I was like, what? Hold on. I don't have to like go in there and like mingle and know all the prayers to you know, feel like I belong. He's like, no, the relationship between you is with you and God. And when he told me that, I walked into any synagogue and I was like, I am here to pray with me and God and the minion. And that's about it. So that's pretty much my journey.
Congratulations.
Thank you, DeAngelo. And now we're going to hear from Sam Howard.
Hello, everyone. You guys hear me okay? Do you hear me all right?
Yeah, just talk a little bit louder, Sam, and we're good.
Okay, I'm trying to get as loud as I can, you know. But anyway, my journey is very similar to DeAngelo's and Dawn's as far as psycho awareness of being a Jew. You know, being that I was at the temple for many, many years as a security officer, and I'd gotten to know a lot of the people that came in and out of the temple. And I had a real good philosophy as to how I was going to take my job, and that was to protect the people that goes to worship there. That was my thing, you know. And well, one day I decided that I'll take a look at the prayer books while I was just waiting for the services to be ending. And I looked at the prayer book and I started reading some of the English down there because I wasn't aware of the Hebrew at the time. So I looked at the English and I was glad to know that, and found out that a lot of the words and things that was said in this book was information and religion and concepts that I had grew up with. And I said, well, ain't this nothing, you know? I mean, this is something I've sure, because I've gone like DeAngelo, like I've gone to a lot of religions. I'd studied Islam, I studied Buddhist, I'd studied different religions to try to, and different African religions, to try to find something that I fit. And when I saw these words, the words jumped out at me and said, this is what you're looking for. And I said to myself, I know this is what I'm looking for, because, it brings me back to my home, because I was raised Baptist, and it's bringing me back to that concept, and I didn't have to go really far because I had traveled far. I went to Europe and spent time in the military in Europe, and I think, DeAngelo, you said something about the fact. No, Don, that was you. You said something about the fact that somebody asked you about being Jewish, and they asked me the same thing. Say, Sam, you don't look Jewish. I said, well, what does looking Jewish look like? And nobody could answer me that. So I said, okay, think about it. And I really hadn't had any problems. Nobody asked me that, but then they came back with another question, asked me, was I the only Black Jew in Denver? And I told them, I said, no, there's a whole bunch of us running around. We just don't broadcast it as much. You have to go to Temple to find out where we are. I ain't had no problems with that one either, after, and I think, I've done a lot of study about religions. I've studied a great deal about the Middle East, and I've studied a whole lot of different things, to kind of get a feel of what it is I need to be about. And as a result of that, I found that if I was true to what I believe, and people, and not get dusted if upset because somebody asked me something crazy that I may think is crazy, I find that it's better for me to come back at them with something that to make them think about the question that they asked me. and then, going from there. Racism, as far as I was concerned, I worked for the government. I worked for the U.S. Geological Survey for 30 years. And there was an occupation where I made maps, and I was a map maker. And that's something that most people will probably don't even know what that is. I say I'm a cartographer, and they say, what? What's a cartographer? Or a map maker. So I used the term map maker. That way they would understand it a lot more. But being that I was black, I am black, excuse me. Being that I am black, I've gotten looked over as far as my promotions is concerned. And they were very subtle about it. It just made me wait. And sometime one time I had to go over to the chief and wonder, well, okay, guys, what are y'all doing? What's going on? And I've been at this grade level a long time, so I need to move on up, because they always talking about moving the employees on up. So I wanted to move on up too. So anyway, I managed to make certain grades as a result of doing that. But at the same time, folks, they retaliate against you. And they retaliated against me by holding up certain promotions that I should have gotten. But that's okay, because I told them, I said, the bottom line is I'm going to retire one day and you're going to have to pay me. Well, you pay the office that pays me, for not going to work. And that's where I am now at this point. Dealing with the temple and being Jewish has been an important factor of my life. It's been important because I secretly, in my own heart, always felt that I was Jewish. And the reason for that is that, when I realized that Christianity comes out of Judaism. So the principles, the concepts, the way of being, the various scriptures and stuff, these things, come from a Jewish mind. From a Jewish people, and they were converted, they were taken along with when folks got involved with the Christians and with Christianity. And but that's where the concept comes. Because I used to tell my mom, I said, when I first was pronounced myself as being Jewish, I told her, I said, one thing I wanted to find out, my mother, what made Jesus the man that he was. That we, at least that's what we got down through the history, and what made him that. And what made him that is that he grew up Jewish. He grew up in Judaism. Jewish came later. And I said, that's where I wanted to be. And and I have one real story, and I'm gonna shut up. My story is that when I was working in uniform and as a security officer, and the company that I was working for, they were putting out the assignments and whatnot. And they gave me the assignment to work at the temple. Now, I never had been into a synagogue before in my life. I mean, I knew Jewish people. I knew guys who was Jewish along the way, but I never went to synagogue with them. We all went to our respective churches and synagogues and went on about a bit and then came back together in the neighborhood and did our thing. Well, anyway, so this particular case, I was given an assignment to work at the temple. And one of the guys that worked at the temple told me, said, "Do you don't want to work there?" I said, "Why not?" "I don't know, it's haunted." I said, "How you know that?" "Because a chair moved on me." I said, "Uh-oh." "Well, I'm not going to worry about it right now. I'm going to go ahead and deal with it." So I went there and they started laughing, I said, "Well, I didn't get the joke." He says, "You're a black guy, right?" I said, yeah, but how you like being a black guy to protect the Jewish people?" I said, "You kidding? They're Jews?" And he said, "Yeah." And they started laughing. I said, "All right." And it was a good move for me, because that's basically essentially what I wanted to become and wanted to know something more about it. And That's one reason. Oh, and another thing, one more thing. While I was still working as a security officer, and before I became a member of the temple itself, you know, in order to become a Jew, it was no problem for me. I had to go through all the different conversions and whatnot, you know, but I also wanted to get married one day, and I found Dorothy came into my life, and she had to convert to Judaism, and it was something that she decided she wanted to do, because I didn't force her to convert because I was Jewish. She converted on her own accord, and Rabbi Ryan's married us, you know, and August 11, 2011. And we've been at the temple ever since. That's my story.
Thank you, Sam. Thanks to all three of you. And Lisa, are you gonna call on folks
Sure, I would be more than happy.
to ask questions?
Yeah, so the first question in the chat is for Dawn. And Dawn, the question is, what would your advice be to another in your position when they are at the beginning of their journey identifying as a Jew? And then the question was after that, have you read Mara Gad's book in which she describes some similar experiences? You don't look Jewish, etc. So what would your advice be?
Just to embrace it. And I think if you know who you are and it's truly in your heart, you'll be fine. And I think with me is I didn't really have anybody to connect with as far as, looking like me. But as far as being a Jew, I mean, as soon as it's in your heart, it's there. And my Judaism, like I said earlier, had, defined who I am and what I am. And once I embraced it, it was it's the most rewarding journey that I've ever been on in my life.
Very good. That's awesome. Does anybody else have a question? Either put it in the chat or raise your hand and I'll call on you and you can unmute yourself. Jim, go ahead.
Deshaun, are you a member of the Jewish War Veterans?
You mean DeAngelo?
DeAngelo, I'm sorry. Are you a member of the Jewish War Veterans? Are you a member of our post?
No, I am not, but I would love to join.
Well, I'll tell you what. Yeah, we're having the meeting on Sunday virtually. And actually, you can probably go to Temple Sinai website and there should be the link up there as to how to get on virtually. That's one thing. Sam is a member of our post.
Yes, I am.
Love to have you. And yeah, just be aware Sunday morning, be sure to set your clock ahead. Meeting starts at 0900.
All right. Thanks, James. I got the email here and I will definitely be there.
Yeah, all you have to do as far as membership is to join national. You go to jewishwarveterans.org and set up with their fee. We don't charge fee. Unfortunately, we can't meet in person right now for the delicious nosh that we so. But
Jim, I'll get you guys connected. I'll get him your phone number and so forth.
Please.
And get him connected and good pitch.
One thing.
Anybody who wants to join the War Veterans, we'll get you connected with Jim. My next question, it says for all the speakers, what can we do as Caucasian members, is a great question, of Sinai to make you feel more welcome? How would we be more welcoming to newcomers to Sinai? Especially newcomers of color? Should it be different from how we welcome any other newcomer? So, I know that we try to strive on being a very welcoming community. and so forth. But what in your journey, and Sam, I know you've been around a long, long time and part of our family for a long time as our security officer way back when, but what could the congregation do to make you or anyone else feel more welcome? Or has there even been an issue where, you know, you felt that way?
There really hadn't been issues with me so much as because the people that I've run across at the temple has treated me with respect. You know, they have treated me with kindness and treated me with understanding. And I think that's basically what we all are looking for in the world, is to be treated like a human being. Like I have, you know, a mind of my own, and I'm doing something that may be a little bit different by being a Jew, you know, and going through various requirements that is necessary. But I think, you know, as far as memberships, the members, they're looking at another person that came, just, you know, open your hand to him or her, you know, and say, hey, welcome to the temple, welcome to the function that we're involved in, you know, and just be kind and loving, and you know, look at that person like another, you would look at a human being, and you would go from there. That's my advice.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Sam. What about DeAngelo or Dawn? Can you guys, you know, provide a comment on that question as well?
DeAngelo?
Yeah, I feel welcomed already. I mean, for me, I'm very active when we were meeting together. So I was on Sinai Sundays, and like I said, I was at Shabbat regularly. And after a while, here's the thing about being a minority or, you know, different looking, is that when you come in, after a while, people start to notice you, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that's DeAngelo." Like, yeah, it's hard to miss him, you know, right? So after a while, you just get comfortable. But as he said earlier, it's kind of a respect thing, right? Don't be like, "Oh, like that's, you know, that's those guys." I mean, I've never received that personally, so, or felt that way at Sinai, or at any synagogue really I've been to. I've been to the Chabad down south too. My son went to preschool there a couple of times, so, and they were welcoming. So yeah, I've just respect and just treat me like I'm a regular person. Don't look at me as somebody that's different. It's not a demographic checklist, right? We're just people there to worship and pray, and yeah, I think that's about the only thing you can do.
And I agree with both of them. I totally agree with both of you. There's never been an incident that I've ever felt singled out or looked at. My husband used to say that it was easy finding me at Temple because it was kind of finding the raisin in a box of Cheerios, which we always thought was kind of funny. And but no, I've always felt comfortable when he was alive, going to service with him or without him. And that wasn't always the case at other synagogues. I feel very, very blessed where I am now. So, and I don't want to be described as a Jewish woman of color when I'm there during, I mean, I don't want to be singled out like DeAngelo and Sam said. It's just treat me like you treat any other Jew, because I am I'm a Jewish woman.
Wonderful. Who else has a question? If you do, raise your hand or put it in the chat. I'm scrolling because there's several pages, so it's hard for me to, or just unmute yourself if you have a question, because I can't see everybody on here.
I have a question, Lisa.
Oh, Marty, go ahead.
Dawn, I hate to ask you to repeat something, but you told that story, it's been probably now 2 years ago, about what happened during the riots and Black Lives Matter. I would love for you to tell that story again. And then I would love to hear the take on that from DeAngelo and Sam as well, because what you had to say was so powerful that I've remembered it. So do you know what I'm talking about? Do you remember?
Yeah, I do. And actually it it was in September, and every time I think about it, I could just, it's almost the same fear that I had that particular moment. It's the same. It's every time I recall the situation, it's the same thing. I was driving home. I just dropped off my son, and I'm between his house and my house, which is not even a mile. And I'm stopped at the stop sign or at the stop light. And all of a sudden I hear this big crash. I know somebody didn't hit my car because the car didn't go forward, but all of a sudden I started feeling all this glass in the back of my head and in my hair. And I realized that the back of my windshield of my car was blown out. And my first instinct was to duck. And I'm just terrified. And I'm just literally just staying like this. And I hear somebody starts going, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And I kept on saying, "Somebody shot at my car. Somebody shot at my car." And I find out later that the people that helped me thought it might have been a domestic situation. And they said, "Why do you think somebody shot at your car?" And I said, "Because I'm Black." And they kind of looked at me strange. And I said, "And with all this stuff with the Proud Boys and with BLM," I said, "I'm just afraid somebody just shot at me." And the lady started crying, the people started crying, the woman started crying. And she's like, later on, she told me that was the first time that the impact of Black Lives Matter really hit home to her. And I think when all this stuff happening, well, before George Floyd, long before that, I have felt in more than one situation where I was terrified, or that I was targeted out because of my race. In that particular moment, it was almost like an undercurrent of my fear of what's going on in the world. And I had that same visceral response when the insurrection happened. And trying to explain that fear to somebody, luckily my son came and he met me, and I remember it took him a really long time to calm me down because I was just terrified. And I thought, what's going on in my world that would have been the first thing that I thought it was. But I think subconsciously for the last 4 years that it's really been a fear that I would be hurt because of being a woman of color or a person of color. So I conveyed that story. I think it was Yom Kippur or one of the high holy days when we were talking about anti-Semitism and Black Lives Matter. So that was the story that I told them.
You might want to tell them what really happened. You weren't shot,
And
obviously.
I'm sorry. And what really happened, I wasn't shot. The world's biggest tree limb fell and it blew out the whole back of my car. And I'm in a pretty, I'm in a like an Audi station wagon. So, they're kind of, they're long. I mean, but it had such an impact that people came out from all around because they thought it was a shot too. When they heard such a, I guess it was just like a big blowout, but yeah, so luckily I wasn't shot. It was actually a tree that ruined my car, which I'm fine with that because my car can be, it could be replaced. I can't. So.
I'd like to hear Sam and also DeAngelo, whoever wants to go. I'd be interested in your take on the same fear that Dawn expressed here.
Okay, well,
Sam, can you talk up a little, please?
Black Lives Matter, and to me is like people are crying out for help. People have been killing us, people of color, for quite a long time, 300 and 400 years, and people getting killed for no reason whatsoever, except for the fact that the color of their skin or their religion, because and folks decided to take it upon themselves, to kill someone because of those particular things. Also, killing people for looking at another person, not dropping your eyes when you pass a white couple or white person, and folks who are taking it upon themselves that because you did this or didn't do that, then it's my right to kill you. And Black Lives Matter, that's what it says to me, that people are calling for help to say, stop killing us. I mean, we ain't doing anything to harm you or bother you or get involved in your way, whether or not you think so or not. The fact of the matter is that we humans just like everybody else, and then there's some people that feel that we're not. And I don't know why they feel that way, but they feel that because we are dark or we have black blood, and that's another thing I want to bring up too. We have black blood, and we also, and I found out to myself that I have not only black blood, but I have Jewish blood. So, so they have two reasons to kill me. But the point is that it's sad that we have these people who feel so daggone insecure in their own humanity that they got to look at other people, and try to destroy that person, whoever he or she is. Like I was talking to Rabbi Rhymes not too long ago, and I told him I went back and far as looked at one of the names of one of the slavers of my family, and I found that person, who he was and what kind of organization he had, and luckily he was diligent enough to keep, do his records real well. So it made it easier for me to find out who he was and my relatives that I did not know. So I guess that's it for right now.
DeAngelo, would you like to add on to this with your viewpoint?
Yes. So the fear is real. Racism is real. Anti-Semitism is real. Discrimination is real. And I think we're all kind of naive if we just try to brush it under the rug, right? For me, I have a different perspective, I guess, on it. I think Black lives do matter, and I think he's absolutely right. It's to the point where we were talking, we were complaining, we were going through the legal channels as a race, and then people are just fed up. They're just fed up. So now we have more media that we can post stuff on Facebook, right? We're more transparent. We can show what's really happening, not just the words that are reported in the courtrooms. And we can actually see something. It's one thing to tell you something, it's another thing for you to actually see it, right? And everybody saw the videos who saw it. It's words can't describe it, right? You get this feeling versus somebody just telling you something. And I think that for me personally, being in the military, leaving my little bubble, right? Asking why and coming to acknowledgement, one of the things I think for me is that Jocko Willenick talks about extreme accountability or ownership, right? So if I'm in a situation, I believe Dawn was talking about it earlier, keep your hands on the steering wheel, right? These things that are being passed down to us, taught to us to protect ourselves, I look at it as if I feel like I'm being discriminated against or in an uncomfortable situation, DeAngelo's going to move, right? Guess what? I'm not going to try to force these people to change their mind. DeAngelo's going to roll, okay? And I'm going to get out of that situation because that's on me, right? If I leave my family in a neighborhood, in a situation to where I feel uncomfortable, then I believe that's on DeAngelo. And DeAngelo's got to do something about that because I'm not naive. I know it exists, right? I'm not going to try to change people's beliefs. Some people are, racism wasn't something that just you woke up one day and was like, you know what? I just don't like these people, right? Yeah. Whether it be Jews, blacks, whoever, right? That stuff is taught. just like cutting off a quarter of the pig was taught, right? And it was passed down, right? In the South, I see it all the time. Confederate flags, hey, stay away, make a left, right? I mean, you gotta be realistic about what's going on, and we're trying to change it, but at the end of the day, I understand the ramifications and I understand the consequences if I try to fight it, right? At what point do I say, okay, I'm gonna fight you all the way to the end and I'm gonna make you change? And then when I pull up, I was looking at it earlier, I pulled up the demographics from the census.gov and in my neighborhood, and it says race and Hispanic origin, and I'm gonna break it down. It says white, Black, American Indian, Asian, Native American, 2 or more races, Hispanic, Latino, white alone, not Hispanic or Latino. Now I just gave you guys 8 check marks that they got for us, right? This is the government. This is Uncle Sam, Dr. Now, out of those 8, how many of them are actually dealing with skin? 2. White and Black. 2. American Indian. Is that a skin tone? Is that a color? No. Asian? No. Right? These are origins of where people are from. So I'm not going to go and try to change anything that I can't outside my realm. And if I feel uncomfortable and I get that fear, I'm going to put my hands on the dashboard. I'm going to do whatever they want. Right? Because at the end of the day, I want to live for my kids and I want to live for me, right? So yes, it matters. And I'm glad we're making progress, but we got a long way to go. Let's just be honest. We got a long way to go. We got to change this demographic census bureau. We're number 1, right? So that's DeAngelo thoughts on it.
It's awesome, DeAngelo.
Thanks to all 3 of you.
Wait, I have a couple more questions, Jan. We're okay. If we go a few minutes late, because I know that Mel and Roberta Klein have had their hand raised for quite some time. So if you guys are okay, panelists, are you okay to stay on for a few more minutes? Okay. Roberta and Mel, go ahead with your question, please.
Well, I have a tough question. As Jews, we don't believe the Messiah has come yet. We're still waiting for the Messiah to appear. And unfortunately, in this world, there are some Jews who are intolerant and who might not appreciate people of color being part of Judaism. I'd be very interested in your take on that.
Oh, if I got an answer for you. I have studied other countries and their Jewish population and find that in even places in the Middle East and in Africa, you have in Lebanon, you have Jewish populations. You don't hear about it very much, but they're Jewish populations. You know, they're trying to function with this particular situation. And I think that, you know, when people want to come against you, first off, you know, American Jews, for what most of them, Jews that you think, when you talk about Jews, you look at white, and if you don't know that person's a Jew unless you ask him or he or she tells you. The same with a Black person. You know, you don't know that Black person's a Jew unless you tell him or they ask for it, and you was able to import him or her with that information. So I find that, you know, a person that wants to demonstrate, they know that you are a Jew first off, you know, and we as Jews, we're all over the world, and we're represented by every race and color there is, you know, and as a result of that, I think that the best way to deal with racism is, like, in a way, not necessarily fight them, but you fight them, but you let them know. Let them know that their attitude is not right, and that, you know, if they believe principles of some of the God that they're not looking at humanity in the proper skies. I find that it is important that you know, and it's hard, you know, is to treat negativism with kindness. I have proven to myself that that works, even though you might not fully change a person's mind, but if you can change a person's attitude, you know, then you have made an accomplishment.
And my response to that comment was that if I had gotten the memo, I would still have converted to Judaism, and that I strongly feel like that the Messiah is colorblind. He's not going to care whether my skin is black or white or yellow or green, that I'm a Jew through in and out to my core.
And I would like to piggyback off Dawn's comment. And it's basically, I don't care what people think. I only care what Hashem thinks. Right? And then at the end of the day, when we leave this planet, do we really think there's going to be color chaos in the afterlife? You know?
Amen.
That's my thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah, Lisa? Lisa?
Yes, go ahead, Mimi.
Okay, as a Temple Sinai knows that I'm on the National Council of Jewish Women, and we are starting to search for our scholarships. And I have very briefly mentioned something to Rabbi Rines about this. And I want to, and believe it or not, Ron knows, you know, all about this too, about the scholarship program. Right now, we do not have any applicants. I mean, this is shocking to us. They're supposed to put their applications in sometimes like the first week of April. We're not sure what's going on, but that's something else. But what I'd like to strongly, do is to encourage all of these speakers, if they know a young woman that is, they have to of course be Jewish, but a young woman, a senior, a Jewish young woman, to please either contact me or Temple Sinai. They need to get an application. So we want to, you know, I can't make any promises, but again, it's kind of a sensitive issue, but we do not have any applicants right to today. And I would like to encourage any of your speakers, if they know a Jewish young woman that would be interested in getting a scholarship for college, to please contact either me or you know, Ron or someone at Temple Sinai. Say they need to get an application in, all the students actually at Sinai. But I'm really looking at these three speakers, if they have any contacts with any young women that they think would be interested in getting a scholarship for college.
Okay, thanks, Mimi. I have one last question, then Rabbi Rines is going to make a quick announcement, and then Jan's going to close out. But my question for all three of you guys is, and Sam, I was at your wedding, and it was magnificent when you and Dorothy got married. What did when you guys, and I always ask this question when people convert, because I find it so fascinating, but what did your families, you know, when you converted, what did your families, what was their opinion? What were their feelings? You know, did you get any wrath from it or so forth?
Mine's tripped. My sisters and my brother and my mother even, you know, they tripped, but not to the point where they denied me, you know, and put through fire and brimstones at me and figured I was going to bring that. But they were very, very upset that I tried, because they thought I was aligning myself with the devil. And I said, no, Mom, no, brothers and sisters. I'm not aligning myself with the devil. I am just converting to Judaism. And do you remember, you know, you guys know Jesus was a Jew. And everybody thought about that and said, oh, no. I said, yeah, Jesus was a Jew, believe me or not. And I'm just joining the religion that he grew up with. And once they start thinking about that, they changed their concept, and they changed their mind, and started looking at me as if I had made a very, very important decision. Because my mother, she wanted me to find a church home when I came out here. She wanted me to find a church home, and when she realized that I was going to a synagogue, which was a church basically, and an activity center combined, and I go and praise God at that particular place, she changed her concept completely. And pat me on the back and say, in fact, even when you start reading the scriptures at different holiday seasons and whatnot, sure, they do things a little bit different because of the community, but they came around.
Dawn, what about you? I know you had some Jewish blood in you, as you said.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
When you went through the full conversion process.
Well, I think that my mother always knew that I was probably going to leave the church. When I started questioning this Virgin Mary thing and, how she virgin, I never embraced Christianity. And then when I met my husband, I think my family actually liked him better than they liked me. And they embraced my choice. My mother, the only problem my mother had was all she wanted was our son to call her grandma. And he's called her Baba from the day he could start speaking. And she said it was okay for him to call his Jewish grandmother Baba, but please call me grandmother. And to this day, at 28 years old, he still calls her Baba. But and my parents were the most proud, thrilled at my son's bar mitzvah than anybody was. So they have been very supportive. They know, and they've just been incredible and very supportive, as I know they would be, because they saw that how happy I was.
Awesome. And DeAngelo, coming from Tennessee and so forth and finding your journey, how did your family react?
For the most part, they were supportive. It was mostly my grandparents that were the church chores, per se. And when I told my grandma, she was like, "Oh, okay, you're going to be like Sammy Davis Jr." I was like, yeah, kind of like that. So, they're fully supportive. Yeah, no issues whatsoever. So I got a great family.
Awesome. Well, first, I'm going to just say thank you to all of you and for everybody being part. That's what I love about Temple Sinai, is the inclusiveness and everybody being part of this family. Rabbi, why don't you go ahead? I know you've got a couple announcements, and then turn it over to Jan because she's got a couple.
Yes. First of all, for DeAngelo and Dawn and Sam, the importance of this event is that while we understand the embrace of a family and the embrace of each person as their own soul, we also recognize that there's racism out there in this world, and there's bigotry, and the prejudice that we're battling against is acute for those who are Jewish. It's especially acute for those who are Jewish and of color. And it is especially important for us to be able to express that as a family, you have family that are with you, and we're brothers and sisters with you. We are your mishpacha. And there is not going to be maybe in our lifetime when we can overcome racism and bigotry and prejudice and all the other hatreds that's out there. But at least we know that we're not alone. And to face that side by side, shoulder by shoulder, it gives each of us a sense of a mission and purpose. And I thank you with everything I've got in my heart for you sharing your story, you sharing your love and your vision, that we can get to a place where it's better. It's better for our children than it is for us, just as we think it's better right now than it was for our parents and those before them. And God willing, it'll be better for our children's children as well. So thank you for sharing. We've got a lot of work to do, but together we'll make that progress. I believe that with all my heart. I want to remind others that there are so many programs that we have, and I want to thank, of course, Marty and Jan. They're going to share a little bit. One of the programs that has come on that we're able to offer, not just, tune in at this time on this day, but the Cell had a wonderful program the other day with Brett Stevens and Paul Bagola and Carl Rove. And it's a free program that addressed domestic terrorism, addressed the political divisiveness in this country. These are three outstanding scholars and journalists and historians. And so Temple Sinai has been granted a special offer where anybody from Sunday at noon until Tuesday at midnight, you can just log on and watch it at your convenience. So you can share that with other friends as well. Susan and my boys and I, we got to watch it and it was terrific. I encourage all of you to do the same. We need to deepen our understanding of domestic terrorism. There are brutal people out there that are trying to cause people of good intentions to fight against each other. We can't divide our nation anymore than it is right now. We need to find ways to heal. And so I thought what they had to share was intellectually and academically important. So please tune into that as well. And so I know Jan and Marty, you wanted to share. DeAngelo, Dawn, Sam, we love you guys. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Rabbi.
Rabbi, I'm sorry, I apologize, Jan, excuse me. Rabbi, they want to know, do you know how you get on there? I see Lisa said.
Easy, because our staff every day, just look at the daily docket every morning, and it was this morning, and it'll be tomorrow and the next day and the next day. It simply has a Temple Sinai, the Cell, and it has the link, and it doesn't start until Sunday night. Actually, it was going to be tonight. And I said, well, you can't broadcast it tonight because we got our own lifelong Jewish learning. And so all the people at the Cell said, okay, Rabbi, what do you want? And I said, well, and so they gave me a special thing. I said, you're not going to broadcast it on the time. We have a very important program. So wait until tomorrow. You'll see it again, and then you can log on. But you have to start no earlier than Sunday at noon, and it'll run through Tuesday at midnight. Thank you, Marty.
Thank you.
In closing, I just want to echo thanks that Rabbi and Lisa gave to our three wonderful panelists, Dawn, DeAngelo, and Sam. Thank you so much for sharing with us tonight. And thanks to all of you for attending. And just wanted to let you know that our next program will be on March 24th. That will be featuring Dr. David Sanders, and he's going to speak about reincarnation. So good night, everyone. Take care.
Good seeing you guys.